Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Front Page on GNet TV. My name is Andrew McKeever. I'm the managing editor of the Manchester Journal, and I'll be your host today. And today it's my pleasure to have with me here in the studios of GNet two ladies who will be talking about a rather interesting announcement we'll be hearing more about shortly regarding the Manchester in the Mountains Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Vermont State Chamber of Commerce. So with me here is Betsy Bishop, who's the executive director of the Vermont State Chamber, and Berta Maginniss, who's the executive director of the Manchester in the Mountains Regional Chamber of Commerce, and a frequent personality we have here on the show. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Great to have you here. Well, let's get started then with, I guess, the headline, which is that the Vermont State Chamber and the Manchester in the Mountains Regional Chamber have formed a partnership or are launching a pilot program. Perhaps that's the better way to put it. Tell us about what's involved. I gather essentially if a business, a small business of 5 employees or less, is a member of the Manchester Chamber, they automatically then become a member of the State Chamber. Is that essentially what's going on?
It is, and I think it's an opportunity for us to work more closely and more formally together than we have had in the past. Partnerships are really sort of the way of business in Vermont, and being able to partner for mutual success is something that I think that will help businesses in Manchester and in this region. And we have a lot of members already in Manchester, and Berta certainly has a great group here, and this is some way that we can help refresh the offerings that we are both providing.
Well, how did it all come about? I mean, what sparked this idea?
I think it came about in a number of ways, actually. Frank Haynes, who is one of our residents in Manchester, is on Betsy's membership committee. He's also on my board. We began 6-8 months ago talking about membership in very serious ways because our membership was not growing really due to the healthcare situation. We went out of the healthcare business as chambers end of December, and so we were looking for ways to enhance our membership. And I've worked with Betsy since I've been here in Vermont. In fact, I've learned tons of things from Betsy since I've been here in Vermont. And so we began to talk about maybe what that might look like, and over the last probably 3 or 4 months kind of came to an agreement that this might be worth a try, not only for our chamber, but perhaps for others in the state. So this is the first of what may be many chamber alliances for membership.
Okay. Well, Betsy, one question I had was like, why Manchester? Was it just the nature of the personalities involved, or was there another reason why you would start here?
We were looking for
someplace else.
Yeah, we were looking for a chamber that was interested in really stepping up, moving forward, thinking of something innovative and creative. As Berta mentioned, Frank Haynes with the Inn at Manchester has been a longtime member of ours, a longtime member of hers, right. And as that committee really started to dig into what this chamber alliance could look like, what the benefits were to the members, what the benefits were to each of the chambers, Frank sort of piped up and said, "Why not Manchester?" And that was an easy way to begin that discussion. And then Berta and I started talking a little bit more specifically about it, and I think we both said, yeah, why not Manchester?
Indeed. Yeah. Well, Berta, it sounds like the health insurance piece of this is kind of was a big driver. I mean, I'm guessing that when Vermont Health Connect, the health exchange that was mandated under the Affordable Care Act, came into being, that deprived chambers of the ability to offer their own health insurance programs, which was a real inducement and an incentive for a lot of small businesses in particular to become members of the chamber.
Right.
So that, I guess, deprived you of a rather significant revenue stream that you had been enjoying up until last year.
Well, it did, and a lot of members that joined us for insurance purposes, really didn't stay with us. So we had some attrition due to that. So I think that whatever chamber you're in, you're looking for new opportunities because businesses don't just join chambers anymore because it's a thing to do. It's just like they don't get into your paper. They don't advertise unless you're getting something back. Same thing's happening with us. What's in it for me? What's the value? What can you bring to the table that I need so that I'm willing to become a dues-paying member? And so we've all, over the last couple of years, been looking for new revenue streams. I've gone into group travel. as a result of that. And now this alliance, I think, gives me a chance to go back perhaps to those people who were members just because of insurance and say, you know, this is a broader reach. You know, over the last year we've had some issues, some business issues that Betsy and her team have been absolutely terrific at lobbying for, and our business community is sort of waking up to these things, are really hitting them where it, you know, it makes a difference. And so I think the confluence of all those things makes it really attractive to enter into this kind of alliance now.
And this applies only to small businesses with 5 employees or fewer?
5 employees or fewer, which is the bulk of our membership, because we are a small business community.
Right.
And we're 18 towns and villages throughout this area.
And so
in
for
Manchester.
us, we're a lot of those what I would call Main Street businesses, those really small businesses with 5 or less, those tend not to be joiners of the statewide chamber as well. So sometimes if they have to make a decision, well, do I belong to my local chamber or do I belong to the state chamber, we always hope that they belong to, we say you should belong to both. But for some of those really small businesses, their market is local. So they're going to join that local chamber, and they should. And so this gives them an opportunity to get an additional benefit and have access to the Vermont Chamber's 5-person lobbying team, which is something that's very difficult for Berta to do, or quite frankly, any local or regional chamber to do. Meanwhile, we've been able to bolster our lobbying team, and we have 5 people now who are lobbying the legislature on behalf of businesses, and many of these businesses are benefiting from that work anyway, and this will allow them to have direct communication, ask a question, how do I find out this? My workers' comp rates went up, what does that mean? What happened with the minimum wage? Where did this particular bill end up? Those types of things. And right now we do that in tandem with the Manchester Chamber, and we're just going to be expanding that.
All right. Well, since health insurance is kind of was a part of all of this, that seems like a natural segue into one of the big issues that is, well, I'm not sure if dominating Vermont politics is the right word, but certainly a big thing looking
one of the top
in the
3
very near future, not only in connection with Vermont Health Connect, but the likelihood, or at least the possibility, that by 2017 Vermont will be in a quote-unquote single-payer system. I realize it's not an entirely accurate term, but it seems to be the one that most people are familiar with. My understanding is that the Chamber is at best somewhat lukewarmish about that. Betsy, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about where the Chamber stands on the single-payer proposal.
I think lukewarm is probably a good descriptor for that. A big problem is we have yet to define what single payer is. So it fits nice and neatly on a bumper sticker. It's something everybody can get behind, but we don't know what it is. And until we really start to understand what the benefit package is, who's eligible, how much it costs, all of those things, how we make it sustainable, and when any impact on the economy, I think it's tough for anyone to say yay or nay. I think some of those things have started to get defined. I think we start to now understand what the benefit package is. I think we understand that the goal is to have, if you're a resident of Vermont, that you get this health care. The government has defined this as being a $1.6 billion endeavor. The Vermont Chamber put some money into a study to really look at whether that was the right number. We had an expectation that that was low. And we did an independent study with some other partners and brought that report to the table. And our report proved that it was more like $2 to $2.2 billion. Now those numbers don't seem that far apart, but when you put a B of billions after it, they're really far apart. So if you shoot low with some new tax, all that means is that you start out underfunding the system, and whatever that tax is just going to increase over and over. So we've got our eye really on that. And looking at what kind of impact does it have to the economy of the state of Vermont when you move from a premium-based healthcare system to a publicly financed, tax-based financing system, one that's most likely going to be based on income or payroll. And I say most likely because There's really no other tax that is big enough to be able to do that.
Mm.
So I think there's some consequences there that I think have not really been delved into, and that's our job, is to bring that to the table.
Well, what about the argument that it'll be kind of a wash, ultimately, for a lot of folks in terms of their pocketbooks? While they may be paying more in taxes, they're also going to be saving more by lower premiums. At least that's how I understand it.
Right.
Do you think that holds water, or is that?
Yes, yes, to some extent there's some truth to that. I think when you are sitting in Montpelier and you're looking at a spreadsheet and it says it's $2 billion right now that these people are paying in premiums, and those will go to zero and this tax will go to $2 billion. I think, yes, that's a wash. But when you start to get into what does that do, what does adding $2 billion to our income tax or payroll tax, what types of decisions are made from that? It's not just the act of swapping one financing mechanism out for the other. It's what's the consequence? What's the impact? What decisions are made then by businesses who are having to pay that payroll tax, or individuals who are having to pay that higher income tax? And I think those are the questions that we want to delve into. And frankly, it's one of the questions that we're pushing the administration to answer too. Governor Shumlin has been very strong in saying, if this harms the economy, we're not going to do this. What we're looking for is what's the definition of harm in that sentence.
Well, and in terms of the Manchester Chamber, this is just the kind of information that we as a chamber, we can't undertake a study. We can't do what Betsy's organization can do. But now with this relationship, we can make this information available easily to our members, so they're more educated about what's really happening. So I think that's one of the things that makes this very attractive for us.
I was going to ask you, I'd be interested to hear if you've heard any feedback from the membership of the Manchester Chamber about Singlepayer yet. Is there any kind of discussion underway amongst the membership that says, hey, this is great, this would be good for ordinary folks, or oh my God, payroll tax, are they out of their minds?
Well, and I think it's just what Betsy says. We don't know what the swapping out really does yet, and people don't know enough about it. But I think they're cautious enough to realize that it's just not going to, it's not an even up. And there are going to be choices and consequences.
And I think one of the things about whether a business likes this idea or doesn't like this idea often is, where are they starting from? So if you're a business and you've been providing health care to your employees and you're struggling to provide that, and it's a large line item, that's a difficult thing. And along comes this new health care reform, and the swapping out might be the same, and then you at least you are paying about the same, and you get rid of the headache of choosing insurance and all that. That's probably put somebody in the plus column there. If you're a business who would love to offer health insurance to your employees but can't afford to, maybe you're a startup, maybe you're a struggling business with a small profit margin, you'd like to be able to, but you haven't been able to, you're now going to get an X% payroll tax that you've never paid before to start paying for your share of health care. So that person's going to think, okay, well, good that my employees got health care, but I still can't afford that. So it really depends on where you're starting from. There's no one point of view. And then, so those are two categories of small businesses. And then there's a third category, and that is the larger businesses who oftentimes can be self-insured and often have very good healthcare programs and are working, sometimes have wellness programs at their place of business. And so that person is saying, well, I'm self-insured, I'm taking care of all of my own premiums, if you will. So I'm not sure I want to start paying an additional tax for something I'm already doing. So there's really, with the business community, it's not just one answer. And I think that's why what we're pushing for is, let's really define what this is. Let's make sure it can work, because we've just been through a reform that it's still not working. And then let's make sure that it works for all different businesses and it doesn't harm our economy.
Well, another big issue that the legislature grappled with this year, and arrived at an answer to, I guess, is the minimum wage question, which is going to go up to $10.50 an hour within 2 years. I mean, there's a lot of
4 years.
4 years, excuse me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back and forth around that. There was one proposal that would have been far more aggressive than that was eventually defeated. I guess, again, from your standpoint at the State Chamber, do you feel like the place they wound up with in the end, was that okay, or is that still a question mark?
Well, you know, dealing with policy and politics in the State House is always an art of compromise. I think it's fair to say nobody ever gets everything that they want. So, and I think minimum wage would probably be one of those issues. Again, a lot of our members, my suspect is a lot of your members, they already pay above minimum wage, and the reason is the market demands that. It's very difficult to hire somebody that's going to stay with you for any length of time at minimum wage. So many businesses are already above that. So there was a tepid response to increasing that. You know, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It depends on what wages you're paying. $10.50 though started to get outside of most people's comfort level. So our advocacy was, if you are going to do this, if you're going to raise this wage, let's try to do it in a way that gives businesses ample time to absorb those increases. Please don't do it all at once, because there was a camp that was looking at doing this, going to $10.10 an hour by January 1 in one fell swoop. That's too much. As we look at the recovery in the economy, we're slowly climbing out of that, but I'm not getting a lot of reports that small businesses are booming.
I'm making too much money.
No, I'm not hearing that in Vermont. And in Vermont, 96% of our businesses are small businesses. So we really have to think about the impact on that. So that was our push, was to really think about doing it over time. We would have preferred to see the governor's proposal, which was $10.10 and not $10.50. But like I said, that there were compromises all around.
Well, and that was one of the issues that really energized our membership base here, because I was working out this alliance, we really were trying to get our folks more enthusiastic in terms of the session and coming forward and testifying, getting up to Montpelier. And that was one issue that really sort of hit the button. Even though we are, as Betsy said, I mean, I think it's where you start. This is a community that does pay very competitive wages, and many of our wages were at that level. But many of our employers said, if we're moving right to that level, then my next line of employee is going to come back and expect to move increasingly up. So it was an issue for us.
You know, the current minimum wage is $8.73 an hour. And let's say you're a business in town and you're paying $10 an hour. If the minimum wage all of a sudden goes to $10 an hour, that employee who's been working there at $10 an hour for a year is going to say, well,
I need to be
that
going
increase.
up.
And the person who's working at another job that used to be maybe at $11 an hour is going to say, well, you just moved that person who's only been here a year up to 10. I've been here for 4. I need to go up.
Exactly.
So there's consequences beyond that, and that's the same argument you can make it no matter at what level for minimum wage. But we really tried to be constructive in that debate, and knowing that we have a cost of living increase that's built into the law now that goes up annually with the cost of living, so maybe 2.5% to 3% anyway. So when you do that math over the 4 years, it's a little bit above where we would have ended up, but again, stretching that so that we can absorb that over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'd be interested to hear from both of you on is the whole general state of the economy in Vermont and where you see tourism spending and activity going, and job creation, particularly for younger folks, is always a kind of a perennial topic we talk about. But I guess, Berta, let me start with you and what your sense is here at the local level in Manchester and our area around here. Do you feel like the economy is beginning to kind of come back from, you know, the awful place it was in 2008 and 2009?
Well, that's when I came, in that awful place in 2008, 2009, to the best place. I do remember it well. And I also, during this time period, 18 months ago, we moved our office into a more central location because we knew it was all about location, 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 and seeing a number of people. We saw more than 10,000 people in our first year as we moved into the Visitor Welcome Center and became a 7-day-a-week operation. And I think although we had a bit of a slow period in, the deadly cold winter this year, we're on pace to really see the same number of visitors, if not more. And I think beyond that, and you know this, we've seen a number of real estate transactions in our community, number of development proposals which say to us new business, some of them larger businesses, but some small businesses. And just as a for instance, Pauline Moore and I talked several months ago.
She's the economic development
She's the
officer
economic development
in
town of
Manchester,
Manchester, yes. We talked with a business that was in Saratoga that was looking at our marketplace and maybe coming over, a small business. And into the car show a weekend ago comes a gentleman, and for some reason he has his card out, and for some reason my eyes were good enough to see it. And I said, "Oh, I know your business. I talked to your daughter about the business." He said, "Really?" He said, "Well, we're looking for destinations that are growing," and he said, "Seems to be things are happening here." So, I do think that people are looking at our market, and tourism seems to be on pace for the summer. We'd love to see more tourism funding and more marketing for money for tourism, but we're optimistic that it's going in the right direction in town. And
it's a bit of a murky picture, but hard to tell. But
yeah. It is hard to tell.
From your perspective in Montpelier, do you think the proposals for economic development the governor has put forward, do they make sense? Do they hold water? Is it moving in the right direction?
Yes, we were pleased on the economic development front. There was some really strong bipartisan work happening in the legislature this year regarding economic development, and I will sing praises to anybody who really puts an effort into that. So this year the governor put $4.5 million into economic development to help recruit and retain businesses in Vermont. It's really the first time ever that we've had something of that magnitude. I know that pales in comparisons to our neighbors to the west, but at the same time, we will take it. We need to be able to compete and show businesses that we want them here. In addition to that, there's an additional $500,000 to go to VITA, our Economic Development Authority, to help with small business access to small business capital. That type of loan capacity is very helpful. So those types of things are happening. Thinking about the economy in general, though, and what I'm seeing around the state, I think what Berta described in Manchester is very similar to what we're hearing statewide. 2008, 2009, the further that gets in the rearview mirror, the happier we all are.
Cringe-inducing numbers.
Yeah.
It is cringe-inducing, and it's really hard to generalize when you talk about tourism, manufacturing, business services. But trying to do that a little bit, what I've been hearing is that folks see that the economy is picking up, that they're getting back to those levels. So that's progress being made, but what I'm hearing is they're getting back to those 2008, 2009 levels. They're not above them yet. And this is going to be
the glory days, as we were talking.
They're very different depending on the type of business that you're in. And what that does is it restores capital reserves. It's able for businesses to start thinking about those next steps and that innovation and that evolution of a business. What we're not seeing yet, that we see it in little highlights, is when they start to release that capital, and they can do that in any number of ways. I've needed a new roof on this building for some period of time. Now I'll do that. Or if I could just hire 2 more people, my business could grow in this area. So it's investment in human capital, it's investment in infrastructure. That type of capital investment we're waiting to see more of. And that's what's going to bring us above that 2008 and 2009 levels. But I'll take the progress that's being made to date. And it's why it's so important that we have a strong lobbying force at the legislature to remind them of what we go through. Sometimes you get into that golden dome aura, if you will, and you're looking at spreadsheets and you're making policy based on paper, and you forget sometimes what it's like to actually make a living outside and on Main Street in Manchester or in any other town. And I think that's the voice that we bring. And back to the Chamber Alliance that we're forming here, that's what we're hoping to be able to get out of this, is to the extent that we have more local businesses and more small businesses, that strengthens our voice and strengthens our advocacy for these issues at the State House.
What is the number one problem you hear from prospective employers or business people who might be considering coming to Vermont, and then kind of either decide, well, I need to think about this a little bit longer? Is it property taxes, which I know you at the Chamber are very interested in and are going up again next year? Is it lack of qualified workers, or is it something else that you hear that it makes them kind of want to go into pause mode when it comes to investing in Vermont?
So when you think about recruiting businesses from away to here, you have to think about what types of the businesses are those and who's actually thinking about that. So you can take off the table any of these large dreamlike businesses that are going to bring thousands and thousands of employers. That's not what our economic development efforts now or really ever have gone after, because it's not really well suited to Vermont. So it tends to be much smaller. And a better job creation strategy is to grow what we already have here. How do we get small businesses to turn into medium-sized businesses to turn into large-sized businesses? And that's where there's so many options. So we see some of these companies that have done that, but sometimes their growth occurs at a facility out of state for a whole slew of strategic reasons. But one of the things that we want to really try to do is focus on growing businesses and grow what we've got, right? So, and so how do they make that decision? To some extent, there is a financial calculation that goes into all of that. The strict, what's the cost of doing business? So, Vermont has high energy costs. We have high property taxes. I think the uncertainty around healthcare has got some businesses doing that pause thing again. Remember, we don't want businesses to pause, if you will. We'd like them to release that capital and grow jobs or provide more infrastructure, those types of things, because that's what makes the economy tick. So I think that's what we're looking at. And so there's that clear financial calculation that they do. How do we stack up? But even if we stack up great or stack up not so great, depending on what their financials are, there's still another calculation that comes in. How does Vermont fit into their overall growth strategy? Why Vermont? What's the connection? Their nexus to markets, their supply chain, those types of things. So I think for each business it's a little different, but we have a good story to tell in Vermont. I think looking at innovative businesses, tourism businesses, tech businesses, that's what we're looking at. Vermont has a great reputation for being a great, clean, green place to do business. So there's folks who want to build their business here because they want to attach themselves to that brand. We're all for that. It's a great brand to have, whether it's for the tourist who wants to come here or the business that wants to come here.
And the quality of life. I mean, the quality of life is just, stands above.
The workforce issue is very interesting. We actually have a great workforce that people know about. If anything, we don't have enough of them. We need more workers in Vermont. We have jobs that are open that are going unfilled because of the lack of talent. And when you think about the quality of life here in Vermont, talent wants to be part of that. So it's a matter of, can you convince those folks who are in a city, name it, New York City, Boston, wherever, can you convince them to make the big jump here? But once they do, we find that they become Vermonters pretty quick.
Well, I know the governor has a program that is designed to encourage younger folks with college degrees to either move back or come here in the first place. And I think we're all kind of interested to see how that goes. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense, but it's been tried before, as you well know, and I'm not sure how the results of those previous efforts played out, but it seems like it's hard to attract younger workers to come here.
Well, there's a lot of reasons that younger workers don't come here. I have two 20-somethings in my household, and I can tell you what they're looking for, and
not here.
and they're not finding
You
it.
have them too.
Now they love
Right.
Vermont. They
Yeah.
love the whole green and clean. They love being able to go out for a hike, that type of thing.
Yeah.
They're into that outdoor recreation. They're skiers, so that piece is good. But there are some things missing that we're probably just not going to build. That's not going to happen. But to the extent of talking to college graduates that might have left to go somewhere else for school, or 20-somethings who have left and gotten some experience there, even those folks that have had some relation to Vermont, right? They went to college here, maybe they went to high school here, maybe they always came up skiing on the weekends, whatever it is. That's our workforce pool, and what we need to do is convince them that, yeah, you actually can have your dream. You can come
You
back
Can
to
Vermont. We have a website called
Yeah.
You Can Vermont.
You can Vermont. You absolutely can. Because I think what happens is some of these folks say, I was up there for a week and it was so wonderful. I loved it. But, like, what would I do? And I think this website that is being launched, it's called goodjobsinvermont.com, all spelled out. I think the notion there is we have good jobs available that have competitive salaries. And so a lot of the employers have started to get their HR and talent acquisition people. They're not called HR people or recruiters anymore. I found it's called talent acquisition. So they've had those folks really come together and try to pool that so that the state then can market one place for finding these good jobs.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of other things I think we could probably talk about, but I think the clock on the wall says we're out of time. So I wanted to thank both you, Betsy Bishop, the Executive Director of the Vermont State Chamber of Commerce, and Berta Maginniss,
Thank you.
the Executive Director of the Manchester and the Mountains Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for watching as well, and we'll see you the next time.